Manta Back, Facebook Live. We're waiting for everybody to join in. We have our amazing Ivy Lamb with us today. She's our webinar editor, but she's also a great writer for Manta. You might have seen her content in your emails, on our content site. So if you haven't, check it out. In the meantime, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. We are on Facebook Live every Friday at 12:30. Join us here. Press that little button below if you want to keep getting notifications when we go live. You can like us to get even more great content from Manta on our Facebook page or on Twitter at Manta. Today we're going to be talking about writing for your business. What do you do when you're staring at that cursor? How do you write for social media? How do you write a blog for your business? All of these ideas that we get questions about from small business owners like you all of the time. Ivy's answering them today. So are you ready to get into it?
I am. Writing is one of my favorite things to talk about, so I'm really excited.
Okay, so we've got our first question. I'm staring at the blank screen. I've got that cursor. Writer's block. What do I do?
So this is probably the worst feeling, right? And if you've tried to write anything at any point, at any time ever, you've probably faced this. Whether you're trying to update your social media page, or maybe you're working on your small business website, you're trying to write a description for your business. What do you do if you're feeling stuck and you just don't know how to get started? Well, I have what I like to think of as like a very handy workaround for this, Heather.
I'm all ears.
People get very intimidated by the blank page, but you probably talk about your business all day, right? With your customers, with your employees if you have them, or even with your family members. It's easy to talk about your business. So my advice is to grab a friend, grab an employee, just someone who you can sit with and have them ask you some questions. What does your business do? What are your small business values? And just sort of talking it out with someone and taking down some notes can be a great way to kind of get the juices flowing and get some ideas. And then you have an outline on paper that you can take and sort of flesh out a little bit. So if you're feeling intimidated, don't feel like you have to just sit there in front of the blank page. Get some help. Just try and talk it out.
I like that. That's really great advice. Okay, so how long is it going to take me to write? How long, we want to bust this out in 15 minutes, or, give me some idea on how long small business owners should be expecting to take time to do these things.
Well, like anything, it probably does depend on what you're writing. If you're writing content for your website that's going to stay up there for a long time, you might want to put a little more time investment in it. So the process that I have found works for me and has worked for a lot of other writers. There's a famous writer called Anne Lamott. She has this advice, which is to write a crappy first draft. That's in broadcast-friendly language, but
G-rated only here.
Yes. So, but basically, the advice is, maybe give yourself half an hour to set aside, and don't edit yourself as you go. Just get it down on paper. Don't worry if it sounds good. Just get that really bad first draft out on paper, and be okay with the fact that it's not going to be perfect. This is a process all writers go through. And then, once you have it, set it aside. Okay. Just for maybe like a day, or two, however long you have, and come back to it with fresh eyes. And that's when you're going to be able to come back and reevaluate and say, okay, are these the points I really want to make? Is the spelling correct? Is the punctuation where it needs to be? Just kind of clean it up a little bit. So I do think it's important to kind of give yourself a little space. Social media, where it's a little faster, a little more casual, you maybe don't need to go through that process. But that's definitely what I'd recommend.
I know that when I do that, oftentimes I come back and it looks like I'm editing somebody else's work. I've almost forgotten what I wrote, and it's easier because now I'm not attached to those words anymore. Now I don't feel like those are my babies that I have to take care of. Now it's like, okay, I can slash and burn and make this good now.
Yeah. Or, show it to someone else if there's someone else that you trust.
Absolutely.
Give that feedback.
Absolutely. Okay, so here's an example I want you to tackle. I'm a great plumber, but not a great writer. How am I self-editing?
Well, again, when you're starting out, don't edit yourself. And here's the other thing that I think our small business owners should keep in mind, especially if you're a plumber, contractor, you don't have to try and be someone else in your writing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to sound like a big corporate company. That's not who you are, right? So what I would recommend, again, just do that first draft where you get it out, try to just be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you come back to it, you can ask yourself, is this still professional? And by professional, I mean, is the spelling correct? Is the punctuation correct? Sometimes just shortening your writing helps a lot, makes it tighter and cleaner. But again, I think it's good. It's good to sound like yourself and to sound conversational and relatable, and just kind of put yourself out on the page in the same way that you interact with your customers every day.
Okay, 1 second, Ivy.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question. Graham,
Yes.
Can you tell us what we're being asked?
Yes, we have a question from Jacob. He's asking, how can Manta help advanced materials small businesses? So you can kind of elaborate that as far as content. It looks like he owns a graphene company, which is that product that's super lightweight but really durable and strong. Tell us a little bit about how he could kind of write content for his and set himself apart.
So, content we write about this a lot on our site. Content is really important, not just in terms of representing your business to your customers. It's really important for SEO. Google does really look at and value the types of content you have on your website. So what we recommend for all our small business owners, if you have the time to invest, putting out content for your customers, especially if you get, if there's a lot of questions you get about your business, putting together an FAQ page
Oh, yeah.
can be really helpful. That's a good option too if you feel like you just don't have the time to commit to updating a blog once a week or once a month. But that is another idea, starting a blog where you talk about things going on in your industry, questions you get from customers, and these are all things that, again, not only are going to be useful for your customers, it's really going to help you rank better
Mm-hmm.
in those online searches.
It's all about the Google.
Yeah.
Jacob, that was an excellent question. We appreciate all questions from small business owners. If we don't get to you today, you can continue to write in on the comments and we will respond to you. We'll answer all of your questions. So keep them coming. Thank you, Ivy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's get into a graphite company. Where do your ideas come from? How do you get ideas on what to write about?
Well, this ties back into that fear of the blank page, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is another great example where getting some other people involved, doing some brainstorming can really help. But, just to get you started, some things I think about are, you could go in and do some myth busting. Are there common myths about your industry that you want to dispel? You could write something about that. Again, what are common questions or problems your customers have in your industry? For example, if you own a pest control company, right? Do you get a lot of questions about how do I control ants? This is a problem for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to handle it, and you have some tips for that. That's a great thing to write about. You can tie your content into events in your community. Seasonal topics are always really great. Exclusive offers are really good if you're running a sale. You could also give some love to some of your other local businesses or partners that you work with. These are all, great things to write about. But I will say another good piece of advice when you're thinking about, especially a blog or social media, some people recommend, and I think this is good advice too, to follow the 80-20 rule. And the 80-20 rule basically means when you're putting out content there to engage with your customers, you want to make sure that 80% of it is just fun or informational or entertaining, and then 20% more commercial, promoting your business, putting up your sales and that kind of thing. And that's a good mix to kind of keep people coming back. Because if you're just posting about your sales and offers all the time, you know, your customers might get a little bored with that. So,
Right, absolutely. But you also don't want to neglect talking about your business too.
of course, yeah, it's a balance. And you know, you may find that your balance is more like 70-30, or I mean, you can adapt. But I think the idea is more to just be mindful of the ratio of what you're sharing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about social media writing though. You've got your 80-20 rule,
Mhm.
but again, I'm trying to fit all of this into 140 characters or less. How do I do that?
Well, you know, I think practice is part of it.
Yeah.
Even for me still, sometimes I sit there on Twitter and I think, what's the shortest way I could say this? You know, is there a place where you've used 2 words but only 1 word will do the trick?
There you go.
Right? I mean, think like Hemingway. Economize your words. And again, you know, if you're struggling, step away from it for a little bit, come back to it with fresh eyes, and it might be much clearer to you what's unnecessary, what you can cut out. Another thing with the social media posts, you know, Twitter, only 140 characters. You might find you're trying to cover too many thoughts in one post, right? So if you're finding like, oh, you're just really struggling with these short social media posts, ask yourself, am I covering just one idea
Right.
in this post?
Right.
Or am I trying to do too much in one post, you know, and just kind of, you know, maybe you're trying to share something in one post that is really 3 posts or 5 posts, you know, so think
Which
about
is great too.
straightening it out, right? Because then you just have more content to share. So,
Absolutely. Okay, great.
Mhm.
All right. So, speaking of social media, call to actions. You know, you want your customers to do something. You're putting this content out there, and you want something to happen. Can you talk to us about how to write really good ones?
yes. So, just to recap a little bit, a call to action is sort of marketing industry lingo for telling your customers what you want them to do based on your social media post. So if you are offering a great sale, you want your customers to click on that link and go through to that sale, right? But they're not gonna take that action unless you lead them down that road. So that's what a call to action is, and it's really important for those commercial posts.
Yes.
Now, writing a good call to action, 1, it should be short. Think 2 to 3 words max. Second, and this is a great piece of advice that comes from Joanna Weeb at Copy Hackers. I read this in an article of hers a couple months ago, and it was like a little light bulb went off over my head. When you're writing a call to action, you want to emphasize the benefit your customers will get by following that action, not just the action itself.
I like that.
So an example Joanna shared is, you know, instead of get free trial now for like a scheduling software, instead write end scheduling hassles. So that's an example of the benefit that customer would get by taking that action and sort of clicking through to that link you've posted.
I'm definitely more inclined to click.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just about just asking for it, and sometimes it's about asking for it in a strategic way.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's really good.
And again, you know, you don't get too hung up on this stuff, especially with the social media, because the great thing about the internet is that you can put things out there and see how they do, right? Test it out, see how it works, you know, try different wording next time if it didn't work great the first time, you know. You don't have to hold yourself to, you know, the most perfect, you know, offer, the most perfect call to action the first time around, you know. Sometimes you got to see what your customers are going to respond to.
Right, and those channels allow you to be a lot more informal in some ways that really is more genuinely, it's more genuine. You're able to connect with your customers on that level that way too.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there any like nitty gritty tips that you want to get into? Maybe a little bit more advanced, going beyond the 140 characters you want to talk about?
Sure. So, you know, not to get too much into grammar, I am a little bit of a grammar nerd. It's true. I'm an editor. I can't help it. But one thing that I see a lot when I'm editing the writing of like beginning writers is an over-reliance on those being verbs. So, you know, that would be, you know, is, to be, was, you know, if you see those those words are just kind of flat, they're static. And we, especially in our crappy first drafts, tend to over-rely on them when we're writing.
Mhm.
But if you have a chance and if you want to try it out, when you go back and edit your first draft, try to circle those being words and think, is there a better, more active verb I can put in here? Because those verbs, those doing, those action words are what really like punch up your writing and give it more spice. So
Yeah.
that would be my one piece of more like technical grammar nerdy
I love it.
advice.
All right. So thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Guys, you can still send in your questions. We will still get to them. And we will be here next Friday at 12:30. So we'll see you then. And thanks for joining.